All right, everybody, welcome to the second episode of The Founder's Mentality. Today, I have a guest that you probably already know, likely already know, and if you don't, we're going to be releasing this podcast after Christmas, so this will be the gift that you didn't get that you really wanted. So you're welcome. Sitting across from me here, this is Mitch Coopet. Mitch Coopet, you would know from Code 42. You might know from his current venture, Aftercode, with Rambl. Mitch and I have been, he's been an unofficial advisor to me personally for probably the last 8 months now. We're both working on new softwares in the sales space, so we have a lot to share. Truthfully, though, I have taken a lot more from this relationship than I've given, so I'm hoping to kind of pay it forward a little bit with this podcast here. But Mitch, do you want to just give a quick introduction here about what you're currently working on, what you've done in the past, just to let everyone know?
Sure, yeah. So first and foremost, I actually like to start way at the beginning. I'm a programmer at heart. I started programming at a super young age. Studied computer science at the University of Minnesota. Found out fairly quickly that I didn't work well for other people, including specifically bosses.
Right.
So that really let me down a road of entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Started a company called Code 42 here in town. We launched a product called Crash Plan that went on to become the number one backup for Macs and PCs in both the consumer and then the enterprise space. By 2016, when I left, we were well over 550 in headcount and well over 100 million in revenue. And we had about 45,000 businesses that we call customers and well over millions of end users on the consumer side. And then finally, we had exabytes of data being protected around the world. So had
couple
done
successes.
Code 42 had done between me and the two other founders, Matthew Dornquist and Brian Bispla, we got to see a lot of growth. Yep. Got to encounter a lot of challenges, overcome a lot of those challenges, and learn a lot of lessons along the way. Yep. My latest venture, Rambl, which is an AI-powered sales calling platform to help teams learn and grow from their sales calls. Yep. That has been just as much of an educational journey. I think one of the things, especially as founders, talk to other founders that have supposedly been there and done that. Right. They go, wow, you must have all the answers. And the answer is, the only thing that's really been transferable from my time at Code 42 is the ability to be open, adapt, and learn to situations. The world is such a different place from when we started Code 42. Right. The track that we took down with Code 42 was a bootstrap track. I'm on a funded track this time around. Mm-hmm. So a lot of new things. I'm in a different space. And again, it's a different day and age. Back in when we were doing Code 42, we built the cloud, right? Yep. And in this day you get to leverage the cloud, and that's a very different type of game. So it's been exciting, and I'm really happy that you're giving me the opportunity to share some of the things I've learned. Yeah, no, I want to talk all about all the things. I've learned personally a ton of stuff from you that I've applied in many, many ways. There's been maybe a couple things that I've said, you know what, that's not the perfect fit for me. And I think that that's an important thing for entrepreneurs, right? You can't take every piece of advice and run with everything that people tell you to do. You have to look at it and say, does this actually apply to me, who I am? Because I'm not the same person as Mitch. Yeah. Right? I think that's actually a really great insight. And I actually try to couch things I tell people with, hey, listen, this is based on my own experience. Yep. One of the things I actually look for in people that I choose to spend time with is that they disagree. Right. They'll outright disagree. They have their own view on things and they're okay with it. I think if you simply are looking for experts to lead you to your golden path, you will fail.
You will. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. No, so, I mean, one thing that I wanted to talk about here, because I think that a lot of people that are going to listen to this are obviously going to be either active founders or thinking about becoming founders and starting a business. One of the first things that you've talked to me a lot about is testing your ideas. Why are you even doing this? You have given me more pushback than probably anybody else, trying to get me to just take a step back and really examine what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and make sure it's intentional. Can you talk a little bit about your process with starting a business and how you test your theories?
Yeah, so It all depends on sort of like where your background is. Whatever you're currently strong in, say, I know you have a sales background, right? I'm a technologist, so that's going to be my core strength. Well, those things tend to be, while they're blessings, they're gifts. They also can be things that cause you to have blind spots. As you try to get ideas for what your next company should be or what the big idea is going to be that's going to lead you to a massive business. I think all ideas start with, is there actually a market for this? And if you're a technologist, the first thing you might go do as soon as you get hit by an idea is build something. Right? The first thing you might do as a salesperson is go say, hey, can I sell 1 or 2 deals around this idea? And the reality is that neither one of those are actually very smart approaches, because while they'll feel good and they'll kind of scratch the itch, they're not very strategic. And overall, if you want to find yourself building a great business, you really have to find, is there a market need for what you're doing? And you can test that very cheaply these days, because there are things that you can do like landing pages. There are things, email campaigns. And also just being very strategic, knowing that, okay, 1 or 2 deals is not the same as having an actual market to go after. So a lot of times people think of things like total addressable market. They'll think of go-to-market. There's something before that, which is just simply market size. And if you don't do the market size experiment immediately, you're really blinding yourself to the biggest opportunity.
Absolutely. And then another person that I'm going to be having on the show, Thompson with Nice Healthcare. I mean, everybody loves Thompson.
Thompson's awesome.
The main focus of that show is going to be around testing your ideas, because nobody does it like him, right? But one thing that has really rung true while I've been building my product, and one thing that I've heard from you as well when you're telling me stories about how your current product came to be, is that investors. Let's talk a little bit about investors, and let's start really early on. When investors invest in you, they're investing in you, right? And you need to be willing to do the right thing for your investor and allow yourself to pivot a little bit if things aren't going in the way that you thought they were going to go, right?
I think the way that I like to frame it is that there are different stages of investment. As the data comes in from more and more investment rounds and funds and the companies that won and the companies that lost, the investors are getting a lot smarter as well. And so nowadays you really can benefit from jumping into like an incubator like Y Combinator, just because they really know that early stage track that you should be on, what early stage traction indicators look like. That said, I think initially the very first investment thesis is going to be team and dream. How capable is this team? It may not have anything to do with track record, while that can help. It's just, do they believe that this is a person that can execute the vision that they've just laid out for them? And it doesn't mean necessarily all the way to the end. It just means, can they get it to a reasonable value? Prove that there's a big market opportunity, and at that point the investors can then reevaluate whether or not you're the right operator at scale. And one thing I like to point out for especially first-time founders is, you don't have to see it all the way to IPO or acquisition. You just have to see it to a great opportunity. Sometimes the things that let you get there, like you're just a great builder, actually hold you back when you get to the later stages of the company. Perhaps you're not a great delegator, perhaps you're not a great communicator. If you are very interested in being a well-rounded CEO type founder, then these are all things you're going to have to learn how to do. But some people just simply don't care to do that. Some people are simply inventors. Some people are simply evangelists. And that's okay. But the best thing to do is to have a good healthy self-awareness, and to be okay with those things rather than have them become friction points and cause a combative relationship potentially with employees, partners, and then most importantly your core investment team.
All right, so I want to dive into how you raise the money that you raise a little bit. But before I do that, when people ask me, so I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit and let you hear what I say about you when you're not around.
Oh boy.
Okay. When people ask me, Mitch Coopet, I saw you were talking to Mitch. What is Mitch? What is he like? I say the same thing to every person. I say, Mitch Coopet is like Robin Williams level smart, right? Robin Williams level intelligence. It's an intimidating thing to sit in a room with you, for me, because you will say 10 things while I'm trying to figure out the first smart thing that you told me, right? You really challenge me to think deeper about things than I typically do. It's a really, really valuable quality that you have, and I respect the heck out of that, right? And that's something that I'm trying to do more of, is be more thoughtful about the decisions that I make in my business. But one of the things that you've spoken to many times that you have a very good process with is how you raise your money with investors, the process that you go through with them. It's something that every time I hear it, I extract just a little bit more of it that I can start applying for myself, but you have it down to a science. Maybe talk a little bit about the money that you have raised with your previous businesses and your current business, and what your process is for that.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for that. Those are really kind words, and
it's true.
Perfectly honest, I've never been compared to Robin Williams before.
Well, you have now,
so that's a first,
and that's how it will be forever and ever.
So so that's it's now going to be on the internet. So there it is. Oh boy. So I actually think that a lot of stuff that we did at Code 42 doesn't really apply because it's so later stage. I think that my most recent experience with Rambl is probably the most applicable to what people are doing. And the thing is, the landscape changes on a year-to-year basis. People are just smarter. They're better with their data. The investors are able to, they've had enough rounds at this now, especially even the ones from like that. I mean, some of these have been around since like literally the the mid 80s or early 80s. But even the newer ones, once they get about 5, 7, 8 years underneath their belt, they start seeing the patterns, and they all share the same sort of insights. So I think tactically there's a lot of sort of I would say platitudes I could speak to. But I think the thing that has actually probably helps the most is just some good tactics.
Okay.
So you'll appreciate this because you're in sales. And so you can't really hope to hit your number unless you have a pipeline that is much larger than your number.
You need a pipeline.
So you need a pipeline. So if you're going to go out there and raise, obviously you have to put together a great story. And that's an entire podcast in and of itself. I actually recommend that founders, if you have another founding partner, the CEO should go out there and just do it on their own. I'm a big proponent of the CEO's job is to build, own the vision, build a great team, make sure the team's funded. That's their job as a CEO founder. And so that means fundraising is your responsibility. And so when you go out there to do it, you should have a bit of a plan. But a lot of people kind of stop at just like, who should I talk to, and then let it kind of grow organically. I like to put everything into a spreadsheet. I like to have the different stages of the pipeline. I put the contacts I want to contact into the spreadsheet. Anybody that I know in my network that can help me build out that top of funnel, I give them access to the spreadsheet, put the contacts in here, and then literally the different stages: conversation 1, conversation 2, conversation 3, term sheet. That's how it goes. You'll have a bunch of folks that will follow it after conversation 1. They'll go on the first date, but they won't go on a second date. Conversation 2 is like, you're going to go have a pretty in-depth conversation about your business and how you differentiate in the market. You might even get a little bit to some financials and sales growth projections if you're at that stage. If you're at an earlier stage, they're really going to try and stress test you on why you versus anybody else. Where do you think the big opportunity is? But what they're really testing for during these conversations is again, are you the person to get this vision done? B, is the vision big enough? And then C, do they actually make bets on divisions like yours? So I like to put it as it's market, it's the founder, and then is it the winning idea in that market?
Absolutely.
So,
That's great.
So then finally, then the next thing you do is like with all sales, you have to create a sense of urgency. And so to do that, you have to time box this stuff. I think a lot of people just leave this stuff open-ended, and they won't say things like, hey, you know what, great to talk with you. By the way, I want to let you know that I want to get my conversations all the way to term sheet land in about 30 days.
Yep.
So if this is interesting to you, I need you to be responsive and get back. If it's not, I need you to just move on quickly.
Yeah.
And no hurling, no feelings are going to be hurt.
Yep.
So just a no is better. A quick no is better than a slow no.
Yep.
One of the best encounters I've had with a VC when we were first raising for Rambl is we talked for 20 minutes and the guy just looked at me and said, "Hey, Mitch, love your track record. I think the idea is going to be big and I'm probably going to regret this, but it's a no.
Yeah. Right.
I don't invest this early."
Yep.
And I was like, "Great, thank you."
Right.
Thank you for not wasting time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great.
And so, last thing about sales, again, it is sales, is learn to disqualify, your prospects.
Right.
Not everybody's going to invest in you for very different reasons. They just might not invest in the market. They might not invest in the stage.
Yep.
They just might not like you.
Yep.
That's all okay.
Yep. Don't take it personal.
Yeah, but then that's why you need to have a big pipeline.
Yeah.
Just to give you a bit of numbers, when I did the seed round for Rambl, I had over 50 conversations in 30 days to get to my first real yes.
Wow. Right. No, so I get asked this a lot myself, and especially right now because I'm in the beta cohort here at WeWork, which has been great, right? There's 15 other startup businesses in there. They're all at different points in their fundraising. And what I tell everybody is it is no different than sales. It is sales. It's the exact process that you court a prospect is the exact way that you court an investor.
Yeah.
And so, yes, time boxing is incredibly important in any sales effort, especially with investors as well, right? Building that urgency, having a detailed, organized way that you're going about the process. You need to have a process in sales as well, or you're not going to close any deals. But the single most important thing that I've at least personally found is the pipeline. Just like in sales. If you don't have a pipeline of deals, you don't have any deals. If you don't have a pipeline of investors, you don't have any investments. And just the sheer number of investors that you had to meet with to close the deals that you did speaks volumes. So any entrepreneurs that are listening to this that are maybe saying there's not enough investment money in Minnesota or whatever state you live in, you're having a hard time raising that money, maybe look at what your pipeline is and build that pipeline. Start having those conversations. The only thing that I would add to that is when you do start having those conversations, if they don't give you a clear yes or a no, keep them informed. Treat it as an open door opportunity to keep the conversation going, just like you would in any sales process.
Yes.
Because I have had plenty of experiences with people that just aren't ready yet, maybe just don't feel like, is he really the guy that's going to make this happen? Is he really going to build that team that's going to make this happen? Giving consistent updates about where you're at, whether or not they've asked for them, will take you much, much further.
Yes. There are two fundamental differences in selling, say, a product versus selling what you're selling here is your company.
Yeah.
And one of the things is, again, you want to create a sense of urgency. So time boxing is one. But the other thing that investors really look for is who's already in.
Yeah.
And so the hardest part is just getting that fire going.
Right.
And so the moment you get even a verbal yes, so the strategy I like to do is I like to try and find people who may not lead,
right,
but will do a follow-on. So they just say, hey, I'm in if you can find a lead investor.
Yep.
If you can get one of those in, they're a little bit easier to catch, and then use that to then entice other investors.
Yes.
A very, very good strategy to use as you're going out having your conversations. So
yep,
you're really not, think of it as you're having about two types of conversations. One is, hey, if I find someone to do this, are you in?
Right.
And then that's a different type of conversation than like, are you going to lead this round?
Right. So if you're listening to this podcast or watching the video, hit pause right now, rewind about 5 minutes, listen to that 4 times over, and then go fundraise right now. And just use all those things, and it will make all the difference for you. Okay. So we've talked about a couple things. The last thing I want to touch on here, because we've mentioned the word team a couple of times, and we actually had a question on LinkedIn from someone that wanted me to ask about teams. What do you do when your expectations aren't being met? I want to look at this in 2 different ways. Let's talk about what you might do with an internal team and what you might do with an external team, because I think you might handle them slightly differently. But how do you handle that when you're building a product And let's just stay in the digital space, and your team just is not hitting the mark, not getting the expectations that you're looking for.
Yeah, so I've built a lot of teams over the years, and usually teams become dysfunctional around one core thing, and that is trust, communication.
Yep.
And then from there become all sorts of things like mismanaged expectations.
Yep.
First thing you do, especially in the early stage, if you're sort of like, if you are the founder CEO and you are responsible for product, which I'm thinking we're talking about here, is are you seeing missed timelines on a product delivery schedule consistently? You really have to start with yourself.
Yep.
Because guess who's setting the expectation? You are.
Yeah.
So I've done product for a long time, and I've found that the number one way to hit expectations is to cut about 75% of what I think can be delivered from my expectation.
Right.
So I really start with just core things. Can you build this thing, and then get commitments?
Yeah.
Now, if people commit and they continuously miss their commitments, then the problem is with their ability to deliver what you need. And then you probably have a problem with with this particular person or team member. One of the reasons I kind of like contractors really early on is because they are, they're mercurial. They know that they won't be around if they don't deliver on their commitments. So they tend to be much better at defining what they can commit to.
Yep.
And they'll also work hard to kind of push back on you if you are being unreasonable in your expectation setting.
Right. Yeah.
So unless you are a seasoned manager, I actually highly recommend, especially for your first version of a product, trying to find a good team that is well equipped to deliver. They understand how to do product schedules. They understand how to do the engineering things required to get like continuous deployment out there so that they can iterate quickly with you.
Okay.
But if you are a seasoned person, then absolutely jump in and try to find a great employee that can help you build things.
Yep.
What I find where there's some challenges with early founders is if you have kind of sort of the sales founder and then you have the technology founder, and neither one of them has actually been down this journey before.
Right.
And so then it becomes more kind of like a sibling rivalry.
Yes.
And so you have to be really, really open and honest and say, what can you deliver, and not try to appease one another, because you'll end up actually disappointing each other.
Absolutely. No, I think that's great. I agree with absolutely everything you said. The one thing I might add to it as well is the importance of documented contracts, so that if things go sour, and we'll just stay in the digital space because that's where we're both at, who owns that code, right? Because I'm a salesperson, right? I'm not building the product that I'm building. I have a team building that product. If something goes wrong in that team and they determine they don't want to work on this anymore, who owns that code? Make sure that you have those documents in place before you start building anything.
Absolutely.
Because I think we've both heard plenty of stories where there is a technical and non-technical co-founder that come together and build something really cool, and then something blows up, the relationship sours, and the product either disappears or it goes with one of the two people, right? And there's really nothing they can do because they were buddies and they were just working on a handshake and they thought this was going to be just fine. Don't do that, right? Make sure you get that documented.
Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, there's no reason not to do that. I mean, there's so many resources available. At the end of the day, your products are the intellectual property of the code base, process that you develop, and having clear definitions of those in contract form is really important.
The last thing I'm going to circle back on quickly here while we're wrapping up on this one is let's go back to what you said about you feel that the CEO's role is to be the one that's out there fundraising. I also believe, and I think you also believe this as well, because we've had conversations about this, that the CEO should also be the one that defines what the sales process is going to be for their company before they bring on any additional support in the sales team.
Yes.
And I know that you do all the sales for Rambl right now. I think you've been just bringing on people recently.
I don't do all the sales, but I should say is that we've actually defined the sales process and got the product to a point where we feel comfortable to actually hand it off to somewhere else. Another way to put it is that your very first sales, let's call them the first 10, 12, maybe 20 deals, those are CEO sales because your product isn't out there. I think one of the things that people, especially if they come from larger organizations, they think of product, market, and sales as different functions. They're actually in an infancy of a company. Yep. They're all the same thing.
Right.
You are learning if your solution to a market problem thesis actually works, and you don't have any data yet.
Right.
It's only once you have data, like, okay, the solution works for this specific set of people that have this specific set of problems and characteristics. You start building out things like segmentation. That happens later stage, but in the early stages, it's all one thing. Until you get your first customer, all you have is a hypothesis.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. No, it's great, right? And I think I totally agree. I mean, I'm right now at the point in my business, I am handling all of the sales efforts. I can't wait for the day that I feel like it's the right time to bring on somebody else to help with that, right? Because I think that there's other things ultimately I'm going to need to be doing for this business other than being on the front lines of the sales department.
Yeah, let me jump in real quick.
Yeah,
I think this is kind of a question that gets who should I hire for my first sales leader?
Yeah.
More importantly, who should I hire for my first marketing growth person, right?
Yeah, let's do this.
Until you hit probably somewhere in the multiple millions of revenue, do not hire seasoned executives. Hire people who have literally just done the job you want them to do and let them be a leader in the place, but also make sure that they understand that as you grow and build this thing out, that there will be additional leadership roles that will come in potentially above them. They can put their hat in the ring, but I think a lot of people do two things. One, they overhire too soon, or they underhire and then they promote too early. And you want to be careful of both of those things.
Mitch, this has been incredible having you on this show. I hope that everybody listening to this listened all the way through, number one, but also took some really good advice out of this. So, Mitch, if somebody listening wanted to reach out to you to ask you an additional question, what would be your preferred way for them to reach out to you?
They can connect on me on LinkedIn. Just say they saw it on the podcast. And I usually respond to most things.
Yeah. If you have questions, Mitch is a really great guy for those questions. I would say the best way to have a conversation with Mitch is you go to a lot of events. I know you're a very busy person. I like to corner you at events and ask you the quick questions that I have. That's been successful for me. Little tidbits at a time. Regardless, thank you so much for being on the second episode of the Founders Mentality. And I look forward to responding to any questions, comments myself that might come through this. But thanks again, Mitch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh.